Children in Ukraine risk hypothermia after Russian attacks, aid groups say. It is January 17th, 2026. Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. I'm Alex. Join me with Arya in the latest podcast by Defense Report for a sharp, no-nonsense breakdowns of the latest in global defense news, military technology, and strategic developments. And today we're going to cover, well, a crisis that's unfolding right now.
We're doing a deep dive into the winter 2025-2026 crisis in Ukraine.
And it's not just the headlines. We're looking at the collapse of the energy infrastructure and the actual science of survival when the temperature plummets and the lights just go out.
It's a heavy topic, for sure. But today we're really digging into the mechanics of it. For instance, we're going to talk about why getting the power back on isn't as simple as flipping a switch.
It's more like a geometry problem, right?
Exactly. Something called a resilience triangle, or really why that model is outdated for this conflict. We need to talk about the resilience trapezoid because that shape, that math, is what determines who lives and who dies.
And we're going to bust some really dangerous myths about the cold. You know, you think giving a freezing person a hot drink is the first thing you should do.
Yay.
We found medical guidelines that say that might actually stop their body from warming up. It's why they call hypothermia the silent killer.
That wouldn't even surprise me during the research, and we'll also get into what people are calling the fortress strategy.
Oh, this is fascinating.
It is. A Reddit thread about surviving in an apartment with no power lines up almost perfectly with military-grade resilience tactics.
And the headline number here, the one that's hard to even comprehend, Ukraine has lost 70% of its power generation capacity.
70%. We're going to break down exactly what that looks like on the ground right now.
So let's get into it.
Let's do it.
Okay, to really set the scene, we have to grasp the scale of this winter. We're pulling from the IRIS Ukraine Winter Risk Assessment.
And for anyone who doesn't know, IRIS is a tool humanitarians use to map out risk and vulnerability. It's very data-driven.
And what it shows is that this January, the cold isn't just weather anymore. It's being used as a weapon, plain and simple.
It is. The data is. It's tough. Since February 2022, we've seen over 36,000 civilians injured. But if you just look at 2025,
the last year alone,
just the last year, there were 375 confirmed attacks on healthcare facilities.
Wait, 375? Just on hospitals and clinics?
That's the confirmed number. It's about dismantling the entire support system. You hit a power plant, okay, you hurt industry, but you hit a hospital, and you stop the recovery.
And they're doing both at the same time. You mentioned that 70% figure. That's from the Green Deal Ukraine think tank.
Yes, and to put that in perspective for you, just try to imagine if 7 out of every 10 power plants in your country just disappeared.
The entire system would would break. Total chaos.
That is what Ukraine is facing right now. And the risk isn't spread evenly. The assessment identifies what it calls cold spots.
Right, the northern and eastern oblasts. Chernihiv, Kharkiv, Sumy.
Those are all classified as Category 5 exposure.
What does Category 5 mean here? It sounds like hurricane language.
It's a similar idea. It means those places historically see over 20 days of severe cold a year. We're talking below -10 Celsius.
-10 without any heating that's lethal. And it's lethal fast.
And that's the confluence of risks the report highlights. You have high vulnerability, the elderly, kids meeting a high hazard, that extreme cold, and then you have almost zero coping capacity because the infrastructure is gone.
I was looking at the ACLE data. That's the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project.
Yeah.
They tracked 130 strikes on energy infrastructure.
130.
In just the first 3 weeks of November 2025. That's not random. It's a strategy.
It's a systematic campaign. And UNICEF is reporting that kids are spending nights in cold, dark shelters. This isn't just a light flicker. Scheduled blackouts are lasting up to 12 hours a day.
12 hours. That just fundamentally changes everything. And it forces you to think about the grid in a new way. We usually just see the outlet on the wall. But one of the academic papers we looked at called it a system of systems.
That concept is absolutely key. The grid isn't an island, it connects to everything. Finance, gas, hospitals. But the most critical link, the one that really stood out to me, is water.
Water? How is that? You don't plug in a tap.
No, but you plug in the pumps that make the tap work. The research we saw shows water systems depend on electricity for 89% of their restoration.
89%. So if the grid fails, the water's gone.
The pumps stop, the pressure dies, the water fails. We're seeing this in the UNICEF reports from Preview Re. They needed special equipment just to find leaks because the pipelines were ruptured from the attacks.
And at Kyiv, they had to bring in huge diesel pumps just to keep water flowing to 70% of the city during outages.
So you can't flush your toilet because a transformer 50 miles away was hit? That's the cascading failure of a system of systems. It's so much more than just sitting in the dark.
And the engineers try to prevent this. They use a model, right? A fragility curve. Can you break that down for us?
Sure. Think of it like a betting line for disaster. It's a probability model that predicts the breaking point of, say, a power line based on stress.
So normally that stress would be like wind or ice.
Exactly. In peacetime, it's wind speed. In Ukraine, the variable is missile strikes. The curve tells you the probability that a substation will fail under a certain level of attack.
So it's literally calculating how much punishment the system can take.
Precisely. But this is where the theory gets really interesting. We usually talk about resilience as bouncing back. You picture a triangle on a graph. Performance drops, hits the bottom, and immediately starts climbing back up.
The resilience triangle.
Right, and the smaller the triangle, the more resilient you are. But that's not what's happening in Kharkiv or Sumy. They aren't bouncing back immediately.
No, they're not. So the triangle model, it doesn't fit.
It doesn't, and the paper argues we need to use a different shape, the resilience trapezoid.
The trapezoid. Okay, so why does the shape matter here?
Because the trapezoid has a flat bottom. After the performance drops, it doesn't immediately go back up. There's a flat line. That's the degraded state.
That's the time you spend broken.
Exactly. The time you're stuck before you can even start repairs because the attacks keep coming or you don't have the parts. In Ukraine, that flat bottom of the trapezoid is getting longer and longer. They are living in that flat line.
And that flat line, that's where the human cost really becomes clear. Which brings us to the biology of this.
Yeah.
What happens to the human body in that state?
This is where it gets really serious. Because if that flat line is 2 weeks long, your body starts to break down. We looked at the ANZCR guidelines on hypothermia. This isn't just feeling cold, it's when your core temperature drops below 35 degrees Celsius.
And there's a huge difference between mild and severe.
A life or death difference.
Oh.
Mild hypothermia between 32 and 35 degrees, that's when you're shivering uncontrollably. Your body is fighting, it's burning fuel.
But severe hypothermia is different.
Below 28 degrees, that's the real danger zone. The shivering actually stops. Your muscles go stiff, you get confused. You might not even realize how cold you are.
Okay, so this is where we have to talk about the hot cocoa myth. The instinct is to give someone a warm drink. Why is that a bad idea?
It's so counterintuitive. A warm drink is only good if it has sugar, because carbohydrates fuel the shivering. Shivering is your body furnace.
So it's the fuel that matters, not the heat of the drink itself.
Right. The danger is the warmth of the drink can trick your body's thermostat. It thinks, oh, it's warm now, and it can actually inhibit the shivering.
It turns the furnace off.
Just when you need it most, you end up with what they call a decreased heat balance. You actually start losing ground.
That is just wild. What about rubbing frostbitten hands? You see that in movies all the time.
Never, ever do that. It is the worst possible thing you can do.
Why?
Because frostbite means tiny, sharp ice crystals have formed inside your cells. When you rub the tissue, you're just grinding those crystals around, shredding the cells from the inside out.
Wow. Okay, so no rubbing. And for medics in the field, there was a really specific, grim piece of advice about CPR.
Yeah, this is a terrible calculation for a war zone. In severe hypothermia, the heart is extremely fragile, but you can't always do continuous CPR if you're under fire or moving a patient.
Right, you can't do chest compressions while you're running for cover.
You just can't. So the guideline suggests intermittent CPR. 5 minutes on, 5 minutes off. It's not perfect, but it might be just enough to keep the brain oxygenated while you get to safety.
It just shows the impossible situations people are in. And the IRS assessment points out that some groups are even more vulnerable.
It does. People with stroke and hypertension history are at huge risk. The cold actually thickens your blood and raises your blood pressure.
So for an elderly person in Donetsk, the cold itself is a weapon.
It's a threat multiplier. It can trigger a stroke or a heart attack without a single shot being fired.
So, the grid is failing, the body is failing. How are people actually surviving this day to day?
This is where we saw this amazing contrast between the macro response from, say, UNICEF and the micro survival tactics from a Reddit thread.
And the Reddit advice was surprisingly good.
It was incredibly sound scientifically. The tent indoors strategy, for example.
Right, pitching a camping tent in your living room, it sounds a bit crazy.
But it's brilliant. You're creating a tiny microclimate Users were saying it can be 10 to 15 degrees warmer inside the tent than the room around it. You shrink the space you need to heat.
The fortress strategy.
And the heater is you. A human body gives off 250 to 400 BTUs an hour. You huddle your family in that tent, and you become a little biological space heater.
And that's where the pillow forts come in. Bubble wrap on the windows.
It's all about trapping air. It's basic physics conduction, convection, radiation, and it's exactly what people are doing in Kyiv to survive that long, flat line on the trapezoid.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
But while people are doing that on the ground, there is a huge macro-level response happening.
There is. UNICEF is distributing cash. Over $22 million to households near the front lines.
Which comes out to about, what, $470 per family?
Which may not sound like a lot, but that money is for solid fuel wood, coal, or warm clothes. It's the difference between making it through the winter or not.
And they're also hardening schools, turning them into what they call resilience hubs.
They are, but the numbers there are still a bit worrying. 43% of schools have their own power, which is great. But of those, 65% don't have enough fuel to last even 7 days.
Only 7 days. Bad cold snap or supply disruption, and they're in trouble.
It's a huge bottleneck. But this is resource allocation in action. You don't put a generator in one house, you put a massive 250 kilo VA generator like UNICEF did in Shoska in a boiler house that serves 3,000 people.
So the school or the hospital becomes an island of power for the whole community.
That's the goal. They're installing inverters and batteries in schools in places like Borodonka, creating a decentralized safety net. The main grid can fall, but these pillars of the community will stand.
It's a battle on every single level. But looking ahead, there's also this techno-legal aspect, which sounds dry but seems critical for Ukraine's future.
It's essential. It's not just about fixing wires, it's about the rules for the grid.
Yeah.
The EU has these strict directives for critical infrastructure, and as Ukraine moves towards Europe, it's adopting them. It's about rebuilding to a much tougher, more resilient standard.
And can technology, like AI, actually help in this fight?
It can. The research talks about using AI models, things called random forests and CNNs, to predict how the grid will fail after an attack.
So it can't predict the missile, but it can predict the cascade of failures that comes after.
And then it can optimize where you send the repair crews, saving precious time. And what's really clever is how they do it. Grid maps are top secret.
Of course, you don't want to hand the enemy a blueprint.
So researchers use synthetic networks. They build mathematically accurate fake grids to use as digital crash test dummies. They can war game the failures without revealing any secrets about the real grid.
That is incredibly smart. It feels like Ukraine is becoming this real-world laboratory for modern resilience.
It really is. The resilience hubs, the AI modeling, legal frameworks, it all points towards a decentralized, tougher future.
So if we pull all this together, what's the key takeaway?
I think it's that this is a battle on three fronts. There's the physical war on the grid, there's the medical battle inside the human body against the cold, and there's a strategic battle of support and resources from the international community.
And what about that coping capacity you mentioned?
That's the biggest concern right now. The IRIS data shows places like Mykolaiv and Dnipropetrovsk are stretched to their absolute limit. The winter is far from over. But the hardening strategies, both for the grid and for the communities, are the best defense they have.
It really shows that resilience isn't just a word. In Ukraine right now, it's a geometry problem, it's a medical protocol, and it's a Reddit thread. It's everything.
Absolutely. And maybe a final thought to leave you with. We talked about the resilience trapezoid, that long flat line where everything is broken. The goal of this kind of warfare is to stretch that line until society itself breaks.
Right.
But everything we're seeing, the tents, the AI, the community hubs, it's an entire nation innovating in real time to shorten that line. They're simply refusing to break.
A powerful place to end it. You've been listening to Defense Report by Alex and Aria, where we analyze the latest in military strategy, global defense, and advanced weaponry. Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. We'll catch you next time.